Bonjour, bonsoir, dear friends. Arturo Crispin, the vendor's attaché, here for another edition of Wine Society TV. I have a very interesting presentation for you today, and I'm coming to you from my home. I'm in my kitchen right now, as you can see. And just wanted to be a little bit more, have a little bit more intimate setting for the show, not so structured and corporate, but something more personal. There's been some changes proposed coming up. Actually, I guess they are going to happen. And I wanted to talk about that today. To get started, thank you for joining me. I am enjoying a beautiful glass of a Bordeaux blend from the Medoc, from Chateau Poitevin, wine by Guillaume Poitevin. That was given to me by a dear friend. I'm loving this. It's a great nose, and it's a delicious wine. So that being said, I want to start by noting that this particular wine is a Cru Bourgeois. Okay, and in 2012, this chateau was granted a Cru Bourgeois status. Excuse me, 2012. The Cru Bourgeois, if you're unfamiliar, is a quality classification for high caliber red wines from Bordeaux's Medoc region, identifying estates not included in the prestigious 1855 Grand Cru Classé, offering excellent value and character with a system of rigorous independent quality checks and annual quinquennial, which is 5 years, revisions, focusing on wine quality, consistency, and sustainability to ensure a dynamic benchmark for top-tier, affordable left bank wines. That said, I want to dive into the Karen McNeil's Wine Bible for just a second, relating to the classification system. And in the Wine Bible, she writes, Bordeaux is an amalgam of regional classifications that can seem insanely complicated. To begin with, the classifications are different from one region to the next, even though the terms used may be the same or similar. Thus, the words Grand Cru Classé mean one thing in Saint-Emilion, something slightly different in Graves, and nothing at all a few miles away in Pomerol. What do the classifications classify? It might seem like an odd question, but it is important to know that in Bordeaux, the main classifications, those that apply in the Medoc and in Graves, are based on the estate, not on the land, as is true in Burgundy. Thus, when a famous Grand Chateau in either of these regions buys a neighboring lesser chateau, the lesser chateau could be elevated to the higher rank. This is quite at odds with the philosophy that terroir makes the wine, but it is nonetheless the way the Medoc and Graves classifications are legally structured. Finally, before we tunnel down into the specifics of the rankings, it's important to know that the classifications are highly politically charged. As she goes on further to say, when a chateau's ranking changes, the value of the property changes astronomically, with a higher rank resulting in hundreds of millions of euros in added value for the chateau owner. For example, in 2012, a Grand Cru property elevated one step up to Premier Grand Cru Classé B status was immediately worth nearly 10 times what it had been just the day before. Okay, that being said, so I'm going to go ahead and get into the real heart of the story. And I popped open my phone today to read the news with my coffee. And I noted a headline, Michelin's latest power move, rating vineyards worldwide. Michelin meaning the Michelin Guide. And they are getting into wine. The renowned guide that shaped dining is now eyeing the places where great bottles began. Wow. The key point to note here is Michelin is debuting a new grapes rating system to evaluate wineries worldwide, with the first distinctions for Bordeaux and Burgundy expected in 2026. A dedicated team will assess estates on 5 criteria, including vineyard quality and consistency across vintages, setting what Michelin considers a new global standard. That said, I did a little digging and I was able to determine what the criteria will be and how it will be structured. Essentially, the wineries are going to be given a score of either 1, 2, or 3 Groppoli, or grape bunches, according to Italia Tavola. And there will be an additional category called Select or Selected. According to the Italia Tavola newsletter, they will not be judging single labels, but the overall activity of the winery. A 3 bunch or 3 Groppoli score will indicate a production valued as constant and trustworthy, regardless of vintage. A 2 bunch will indicate a producer that's well recognized in their own ward or their own context. So they stand their ground in the industry. And a 1 bunch identifies a winery capable of expressing wines of character in a favorable vintage. And then the selected or selection category will include ultimately the wineries that maintain a regular quality overall. That being said, the criteria looked at would be agronomy, and agronomy applies to the vineyard management, how they manage the canopies, how they manage yields, do they employ biodynamic or organic farming techniques. They're going to look at techniques of vinification, territorial identity, which is really interesting. Ultimately, I'm going to guess that if you're producing a blend and it isn't necessarily it meets the requirements, but maybe it's not meeting the expressing that particular place, maybe that will impact their scoring system. Equilibrium in the wines and constancy over time, which is important, things we look at today. The analysis will begin with the management of the soils and the vines. It will pass through to the practices within the winery, and it will verify the expression of place, harmony of the flavor elements, and the winery quality over multiple harvests. So those are what we know so far, how Michelin is going to be looking at the wineries starting in Bordeaux and in Burgundy. So I did a little bit of digging, and I subsequently discovered that the primary entity that provides wine scores, which would be wineadvocate.com or robertparker.com, happens to be a wholly owned subsidiary of the Michelin Group. Wow. How do you like them apples? Grapes. What does that mean for wine scores? What does that mean for wine prices? That's really, to me, that sends off bells and alarms. If you're not aware, the Robert Parker scoring system, 100-point scoring system, is the sort of de facto standard that most people know. If they ask, want to know about a wine, how good is it? You can tell them, oh, well, it's 95 point or 89 point, 95 point. And the important thing to note in those scores is that the impact on prices is astronomical. A wine price can go from one day to the next after a score to 2x to 3x times the initial price, market price. So significantly, there's a significant sensitivity to wine scores in these high echelon winery producing regions. Going a little deeper, there has been criticism already of scores, and especially Robert Parker personally is retired. This entity portion is part of the Michelin group, but looking back on the content of the criticism, according to sommelierwinebox.com, and I'll just read it. Parker has also received much criticism for the influence on wines that many believe he has had over the years, effectively changing the market and the wine production system. Those who oppose him have called for a return to the specificity and diversity of the various terroirs. Going back to the 1855 classification, what the wines were supposed to be judged on, the expressions of place, the vineyard, the aspect, etc. Now he has retired, but it's impossible to deny the importance of the Parker points on the market. This is confirmed by the growth in price of wines with the highest scores and the great visibility of his reviews on countless wine sales websites. So, that being said, it sounds like to me that this is a definite power move on behalf of Michelin Group. It brings up a lot of questions as to what the impact in the wine market it will be and it will have. Bordeaux and Burgundy will be the launching of this new system. Ultimately, you will see this spread. It is intended to be worldwide. So that means that wineries, for example, in Italy that are regulated under the DOC, Denominazione d'Origine Controllata e Denominazione d'Origine Controllata e Garantita system, will now have another layer that's going to impact their wine production, their winery operations, winery expectations. Obviously, there's the flagship wines from the myriad of countries and wine producing regions that have the cachet and are going to demand the 3-bunch score. Those wineries have the wherewithal to deal with the variations in the from vintage to vintage to vintage. Whereas maybe there will be some that are more sensitive and may not have that ability to, let's say, produce a quality wine in a vintage when they're, hit with frost or, late season rain or something like that, where they lose a lot of crop, or they're having to work with fruit. Maybe that was, scorched because there was a heat spike. Those are some, normal, potentially catastrophic events of nature that wineries typically always have to contend with. And so, for those guys, they're going to be under the constant pressure to have to maintain that level. And what's that going to do to their reputation as being a quality wine producer as the time goes on? Another question that comes up to me is the scoring system. because if this 100-point scoring system is used, that is part of the Michelin group entities. What about the independent expert reviewers who are not using the 100-point system, that have their own system in place to review wine that is respected and highly regarded? How is that going to reflect on their judgment of the wines? So there's a lot of questions that are come up, and I think it will be worth paying attention to, especially when it comes to price. Because if out of the box there's not a lot of knowledge about the system, and next thing you know, it looks as if a wine earned, for example, a Cru Bourgeois ranking, a Chateau earned a Cru Bourgeois ranking, and then now they're earning another status symbol. Is that going to make their price double or triple, when in reality there wasn't anything different that they did? They just sort of got a pseudo upgrade. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for joining me. Continue to enjoy wine. We're keeping our eyes on the market, and I thank you, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Cheers.